Good evening, my name is Morgan Geraci, and as you can see, my topic today is how has the United States hegemony shaped China today? So what is hegemony? Hegemony is a single powerful state. So just like the United States, for example, their strengths are in their military, their economic, as well as their political aspects of their country. It's harder to see, but there's three pictures down here. You can see Uncle Sam, where he's taking over the WTO, NAFTA, McDonald's, retail, trade, international trade. There's another one where the U.S. is actually holding China and taking care of China that way. So what does U.S. hegemony look like? So the United States came out on top of every other country in the world during World War II. The reasoning behind this is that the United States actually didn't have as much damage, structural damage to their country compared to Italy and Germany, France, Austria, countries in the Eastern and Western European aspects. So we came out strengthening our military, our political, as well as our economical, because we didn't have those destructions as they did, so we enhanced ours so then we can help them and become the U.S. hegemon. Again, we were not bombed. We were one of the only countries that were not bombed within World War II. So we went in after we helped the other countries like Germany, France, helped take care of their countries in regards to restructuring theirs, and then this is how we built allies, and this is how we became the U.S. hegemon because we had the finances to rebuild their country where they didn't. And not only this is that this helped opposing forces that didn't get involved with us. So we had the lowest amount of casualties at 274,000 casualties. And the economic strength, as you can see, was enormous, but the global reserves of $220 billion that we took over as the United States, whereas the other countries didn't have that opportunity to do so. So to go on with this of what the U.S. hegemony looks like, I'm going into the Cold War era. So during the U.S. hegemony and the Cold War is when we really became dominant with Russia as well. So Russia and the United States, what happened with our relationships is that Russia had the idea that we were trying to take over their allies. So they were concerned that we were taking over China, which means they thought that we were actually going to go and attack Russia at some point after World War II. This also came true with the Cuban Missile Crisis as well, because Cuba is 90 miles off the shore of Florida, as we all know that. And Russia and Cuba had a relationship already with their nuclear missiles because they felt threatened that we already have nuclear missiles. So that almost caused World War III and the nuclear arms race. So Russia, after World War II, was really threatened by us, and they thought that we were trying to attack their people as well as attack their community and their government and their military. So they were concerned about us being the global hegemon because they really wanted to be that, but they didn't have the full economic strengths as we did, nor the military strengths as we did. So going from the historical background portion, the next part is the U.S. economic liberalism and its influence on China. This is one of the most important because China isn't how it was today 100 years ago. So we helped its economic through its economic liberalism, and I'll show you how. So economic liberalism, what it is that it's committed to the principles of free trade, so a world without trade barriers. Before this, China had a country who was very strict on their politics and economics, so they didn't want to change according to the U.S. and their mannerisms and what they're looking for trade. But they did realize that, listen, if we were able to do this and we were able to open our trade barriers, our economy would grow. So this is what they did. So with the free trade, from what the U.S. projected on them, President Clinton, during his presidency, he really pushed China to be in the WTO, the World Trade Organization. What this was is that President Clinton saw an enhancement with China adding or agreeing to be a part of the WTO, which it did and was one of the first founders. But the reasonings for this, as you can see below, is that China grew from this so strong and so quickly that their trade barriers opened, and now they have over 50% of their economy is based off of international trade. which is quite a lot for a huge company with the largest amount of people, almost the largest amount of people in the nation, in the world actually, that their nation has one of the most. And the reasonings for this is because they have such a large trade barrier, or they did now, and right now they have a larger trade barrier, where they're able to import and export goods because they're added to the World Trade Organization, where now they can grow. So free market economics. So I'm going to read word for word because it's super important in this part. So the non-democratic and authoritarian political regime in China has meant that it has been possible to embrace Western-style free market economics while maintaining control over the political system. In many ways, the planned economy of China, where the state controls economic activity rather than private businesses, has accelerated economic growth because the government has controlled all decision making. This was very important for China to understand this, because with their aspects of their business, with their government, is that they don't like changing their government. They're very strict on what they do as a country, as their business. So with this, when they opened to a free trade market, their economics really grew, and then they started strengthening their business and their economy. So ever since they opened to a free market capitalistic country, countries such as Germany, China's a leading provider for Germany, China's a leading provider for us. We do all of our manufacturing over in China. There's a reasoning for it, because now it's easier to offshore it, which I'll get into that later. Because of the pricing, it gives them job opportunities, and this is what the United States wanted to do. They wanted to give them job opportunities, but also to enhance their government, because every country sees an enhancement within China and what they're going for in the future. They're going to be the next global hegemon in the next 10 to 30 years. Is what everybody's saying at this point, because they've grown so far, because the United States has helped them to this point. So back to the economic growth of China. So the global trade with the U.S. and China has now opened global trading systems. So going off of this, China's increased its global trade from 1% in 1978 to a huge increase of its annual quarterly flows, up to now 17% of its global economy. So just in the past 30 to 50 years, they've increased 16% because of our help within the U.S., which is great. And going off of that as well, with the globalizing economy, by buying foreign companies in North America, we offshore them overseas to China. The reasoning for this is because the manufacturing is cheaper. They import already a lot of the materials that we need, so it doesn't make sense for the U.S. to ship it to the United States and then bring it back to China, and then to bring it back again. The imports and exports and the opportunity cost of that would be too much. So the economic benefit of having this in China actually increased their economy and moved over 500,000 people outside of the country area over to the larger cities like Shanghai. Shanghai is the largest manufacturing in all of China, where most of its products are American-made products. Well, American sold products that are manufactured in China but are sold in the U.S. So it really gave a job opportunity to China because of the economic growth that the United States was able to give to them. And going off that as well is that China is expected to grow 3 times larger than the U.S. in 2010, so almost 9 years ago. It's at the point in its lifespan where it's actually going to outgrow the United States. If you look at all of the current day reviews of how China is doing and how it's comparing to the United States, it's actually doing much better than how it has been. And within the next 10 to 15 years, like I said, they will be the next global hegemon, because now they have all these advancements and they have all the manufacturing in all these companies overseas, where they have all these foreign investments as well. So going off of that, this boosts the amount of American companies in China, clearly, like I've said. In 2009, companies such as Apple, Ford, Nike, Starbucks, they've increased immensely. That almost, I think it was around 1.5 million now are opening up yearly. And just within this time, in the past 3 decades, 3.6 billion foreign direct investment has increased as well within these companies now that they're offshored overseas and that they're franchised over in China. Also, GM and Volkswagen, so the 2 car companies, and like I said, manufacturing is huge over in China. They've also increased, and Ford has reached 84% higher in China than it ever did in the United States. So all the manufacturing that they do in China, it really shows right here of where it's coming from and where it's going to be sold and where the best finances are going to be made out of. Going into that, the financial sector. So the financial growth of China, just like its economics, the financial growth has accelerated as well. So a lot of the foreign direct investments are going into China. What this means is that other companies in other countries as well are investing their businesses overseas in China for their growth. So with this, like I said, companies such as Starbucks, any American-made brand, a majority of them are now franchised over in China because of the opportunity cost of the manufacturing, the direct investments, as well as the labor. They can do it for cheaper over there and then offshore overseas and make more money on both ends. But to get into specifics and nitty-gritty, the foreign investors are allowed to own 51% in security firms, insurances, etc. So the reason why people invest in China in the financial aspect for the foreign direct investments is because they can have over 50% of their profit overseas into this country in China, no matter what country they're in. Also, it is now the world's largest saver. So in the past, when they didn't have anything and when they didn't have the right support, they didn't have anything to go on. So now they do because they're growing, they're constantly growing, they're increasing their revenue, they're increasing their workforce. So now they're able to save. And right now they have $17.4 trillion in domestic financial assets alone, just in their assets. That's a lot from a country